I'm really excited about today's topic because today we're not just going to be hearing about history, we're going to be hearing from someone who stood in the midst of history as it was being made. So, as probably all of us can remember, the 1960s were a decade when America began to take some of its boldest steps towards its ideals. In those years, we saw the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the creation of Medicare and Medicaid, the launch of the Head Start program that opened the doors for so many children, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the push for school integration, and the early environmental protections that would lead the way to the EPA. And much of that momentum was fueled by the moral power of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, when 250,000 people, 250,000 Americans, filled the National Mall and demanded that the promise of freedom and justice be made real for all Americans. So our guest today, Laverna Hargrove, was there. Since then, Laverna has spent an entire career, over 30 years, as an educator in Brunswick County schools, teaching social studies and language arts. But in August of 1963, she was just a 16-year-old girl from Southport, North Carolina, population 2,034. And she was standing in the massive crowd as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered the words that would echo through history, "I have a dream." Now, before Laverna shares her story, we're going to watch about 10 minutes of that famous speech. And as you watch, imagine the scene through her eyes. Your first trip to Washington, your first time in a crowd that size, and the voice of Dr. King, who was only 34 years old himself, as he painted a vision of an America we were still striving to become. So let's go back to that day. Turn it up. I don't think so.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
In the corners of American society, and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Okay. So now we're going to get to hear from Laverna and tell us a few of your memories from attending that event, traveling there, and how you got to go there and things.
Not a
So
hard thing to follow.
put this over here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Liz, and your staff for asking me to come today and talk about my experience at the March on Washington. Now, you must remember you're talking to somebody that at that time was really 15 years old. The march was in August, and I didn't turn 16 till September. So I was sort of on the bus, kind of illegally, you know, because you had to be 16 to go. But I had been active with the NAACP Junior Division, and so I was allowed to go. We had been demonstrating in Southport to desegregate the movies and restaurants. We would train in Wilmington because our NAACP Junior Division partnered with theirs, and they were more active than we were. So they would send down trainers to tell us how to behave online, how to defend yourself, to keep from being hurt because it was a nonviolent movement. And when they had trained us sufficiently, we were allowed to go to Wilmington and join in their demonstrations and protests. When we went to Washington, we got to go because we had fundraisers. And from Southport, I can't remember everybody that was on the bus because it's been 62 years. But another reason my mother allowed me to go, I was dating this fella that I married later, and he was older. He would have graduated that May. And my mother said, I'm going to let Laverna go, but she better come back just like she went. My mother wasn't one to mince words, you understand? And when we went, we made the news because we were the only ones there in a uniform. I was dressed much as I'm dressed today, but it was a black jacket with a hood on it, and on the back it said Southport NAACP. Black skirts, black shoes, white tops. That was the uniform. You had to do that. They parked, we got on the bus came to Southport as I remember it and picked up a few of us because it wasn't enough for a full bus load from Southport. And we rode all night, got there, got off the bus, parked in this area, and our sponsor coordinator, who was Charles Rogers, said, keep up with each other and be back at this bus at a given time. Those were the instructions.
Oh my God.
That was it. Well, where is it? Follow that crowd right there. And they had loudspeakers all along the route. And we managed to get close enough to see the stage. I could see people on the stage. And of course, you could hear Dr. King. And to this day, whenever I hear that speech, I get goosebumps. It happened, and it happened then, and it happens today. And after they had left the stage, we were allowed to walk around a bit, and on the mall were all of these entertainers and celebrities, and they had different little tents set up, and you could go and hear them. And I remember hearing Peter, Paul, and Mary, and I remember going to see Sammy Davis Jr., and he asked us where we from with the jackets. I remember that. We didn't go to, there wasn't any going to the restaurant, forget that. We had packed lunches and sodas and stuff, that was on the bus for us. We got back on the bus, and as we were coming through Enfield, North Carolina, the police pulled the whole bus over into the police station. And Charles Rogers said, go into quiet mode. That meant nobody say anything. Just sit there with your mouth shut, don't say nothing. And we did. And the police took Charles Rogers and Mr. Horton and one other person whose face I can't remember, into the police station. And I guess they kept them about maybe an hour. And there's always one in the bus that can't sit down. And this guy got up, and the rest of, when he stood up to say, the rest of them stood right up with him, and down he went. Sit down, he said, sit down, that's what you're gonna do, sit down. And then we came on home. And it was, you don't talk until they tell you could talk. And we were a long way down the road before Rogers told us, all right, y'all can talk to each other. And we got home and got off the bus all excited that we had been to the March on Washington and everybody was back. And we didn't really realize, I know I didn't, the significance of what I had been in. And it was years later. I went to A&T State University, graduated from there. And when I got there, I had a banner, a sticker, and a button that I had kept from the march. And the banner, the little bumper sticker thing said, I was there. And my roommate just like flipped out on me. You were where? I said, I was at the March on Washington. Like, didn't everybody go? And it was there that I began to realize that the significance of the march. I was also at A&T when Dr. Martin Luther King was killed. That's another story. I can't think of anything else. Some of you may know Nelson Adams.
Yeah.
He was on the bus with us. Howard Lee, Ann Lee, and for the life of me, I think Minnie Horton was on there. But I know I was one of the youngest ones to be on that bus. Do you have questions? Because the memories come in and out. They're not, it's been more than a minute.
Well, this is probably not worth asking, but as Martin Luther King was standing, where were y'all? Were you back to the left or the right or where?
I don't remember exactly. Wait a minute. I could see people on the stage, but we were way back. Mm-hmm.
You're part of the 200.
I was probably somewhere in Virginia. It is, yes, ma'am.
What accommodation did they have set up for restrooms?
They had porta potties, as I remember it.
Everybody needs someone like that on their trip to figure
Yes, sir.
out the details.
How does Southport react as a community, knowing that members of the community had gone to the march, either before, during, after?
Well, There was some resistance, of course, to desegregation, but we had also had a history of what I'm going to call familiarity. Some of the folk that, like your former mayor, Mr. Holden, he used to go to Elmer Davis's cafe to dance and eat and be sociable, and a lot of others. So we knew each other, but once we were out of these social situations, we didn't recognize each other. There was an incident where a girl lost a sight in one of her eyes when we were demonstrating. Her name was May Miller, and they had arrested some of us for demonstrating, and we were at the old jail, and they told us to move back from the fence. And she was on the front line, and they threw a tear gas bomb, and her eye was affected.
That was in Southport?
That was in Southport. Yes, ma'am.
How many were in your group? Was it a full bus total that went and came back?
It was a full bus, but some of them were from Wilmington.
And did you connect with anyone else, or did you just go, your group went by yourselves?
Well, we were connected, but you're talking about as an organization? No.
Yeah, I meant like, were there more buses? Did
Yeah, there was. I think we
I
had.
meant, did you travel with other buses or
There-
another group? Or
There
did
were
you-
2 buses from the Wilmington Southport delegation.
Okay.
But once you got there, you got off the bus and got in the crowd, so there
Well,
wasn't
sure,
a.
but I meant as you traveled, if there was more
No.
than just the 2 buses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Tell us what it was like to go to the Amuse You Theater back in the day.
Back in the day, to go to the Amuse You Theater, some things were already in place. So when we went, we knew we were supposed to sit downstairs. And there was an upstairs. I mean, we were supposed to sit upstairs. My husband, as a teenager, worked for the Furpless family, cleaning up the movies. So when he showed up to protest, well, he and Bill were friends, and it was kind of a cold situation after that. But they weren't mean, the Furpluses, they weren't mean, but they were for preserving the status quo. But you may have read in the newspaper that they issued a letter of apology some years ago for the way that we had been treated during the time that they owned the movie. Yes?
Did you ever find out about the experience of your sponsors when they were taken into that police station?
No, they never talked about it. Never talked about it, yes.
What year did you start protesting in Southport?
I'm gonna say 61, 62.
How you were a baby.
About that time. Mhm.
So, protesting and resistance can be scary.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Protesting and resistance can be scary actions, obviously. What did you guys do to make that sustainable action to balance the fear and other emotions?
Well, to tell you the truth, I don't remember being scared.
Really?
I don't remember. I see it on I saw it on television, what was happening in other places, but to tell you our parents were more afraid than we were.
Really?
But I don't remember feeling anxious or jittery. They had told, now if this happens, you do this, and the first thing you cover is your head and your face, and how to ball up in that ball, and
So preparedness helped you?
yeah, you could say that, yeah. We knew how long to stay. We knew what the perimeters were. You couldn't go on their property. You had to be in the street. They didn't leave you online long, and there was always a person there that monitored the group. And if he saw you getting upset, he'd pull you off and put somebody in, because you couldn't be on there mad, because you,
Right.
What a coordination of efforts, that's amazing,
yeah.
that's amazing.
Not that you look back, but it was just, it wasn't that then. It was trying to make a difference, trying to change things. And fear, I guess we can thank God for that, but fear wasn't really a part of it. I never heard anybody say that online that they were scared. You going tonight, you scared? That didn't happen. I didn't hear that.
Wow.
I don't say it didn't exist, but, and they probably wouldn't have put you in the line if they thought you were afraid.
Well, one thing is, you're right, people knew each other.
Yeah.
Particularly boys, they'd play ball together, they'd
Yeah.
just show up at the field and just play ball. And Trudy Huffman, the deal, she said if supper time and her brother wasn't home, her mom would say go to the school and get him, because he was playing basketball at the training school.
Yes.
What was the mood of the crowd like in the march, and what do you remember about Dr. King's words?
I thought he had the most wonderful voice in the world. And it was coming through loudspeakers, and you could hear every word he said. But when you hear on this, when the crowd cheered, it wasn't like that. That was a muted cheer. It sounded like thunder. Like, I mean, just, and the applause wasn't quick and cut off. It went on. When in those spots where the crowd applauded. And it was a quiet, because they wanted to hear what he was saying. It wasn't a lot of busy, or where I was, it wasn't a lot of busy noise. Maybe it was the loudspeaker, but it didn't seem to, people didn't seem to be carrying on their own conversations while he was talking.
Well, were you aware of a lot of policemen around or stuff like that?
There were a lot of policemen. Almost enough policemen for one for each person, to tell you the truth. It was a lot of policemen. And they were all dressed so you know they were policemen.
Right, so you knew who they were.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Do you remember other speakers that day? Do you remember John Lewis, for example?
No, I don't remember John Lewis that day. There were other speakers, but you know, I have no memory of them.
Didn't Dr. King do a speech in Southport across from the jail at that church, or no?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
No, we'd have been still. You'd have had that crowd out there.
Oh my God.
No. Any other questions?
Did you have siblings or cousins involved?
I'm the eldest of the three, and they weren't anything but babies. They couldn't go. And I had a bunch of cousins, but for some reason, they didn't go, and I don't know why.
When you came back, did you feel more invigorated about protesting, or you did not?
Encouraged.
Encouraged?
Yes, encouraged. I'll say we weren't much encouraged. But it was a thing that we flaunted, because we really didn't recognize the significance of it, you know. It was years after.
And was the AMUSU desegregated after this, after 63 or before?
After.
After?
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Yes, sir.
And the restaurants were after?
After, yeah.
So, I'm Larry Ashley. I chair the cemetery committee, and I've been doing work on Northwood Cemetery, the history. Everybody knows about Old Smithville, not everybody knows about Northwood. Northwood was originally for whites only when it was set up in 1937 and ended about 1971. So some of my research, I'm going into the Brunswick County Training School and things like that. So, and Mr. Cavanis and his history. What did Mr. Cavanis think about you going to that march?
Well, Mr. Cavanis publicly was neutral, and he had to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But privately, he thought it was a great thing. He called us at his office, you know, and asked us about it, and said something like, you know, to the effect of "thank you for going," you know, that kind of thing. But publicly, he was neutral.
He really had to do a balancing act, didn't he?
He really did.
Yeah. Yeah.
He really did.
Thank you.
Thank you, by the way, for the reason we're here. Being born in '65, I love knowing this perspective, especially being a mother of sons growing up in Chapel Hill in eastern North Carolina, I should say, who never, you know, have seen color or I mean, they've just vibed with everyone, everywhere, from
Okay.
early days. I don't know historically when the Up to the Mountain speech came, but I thought Martin Luther, Dr. King wrote a separate speech, but maybe it's really all the same one.
No,
So I
there are two separate speeches. His mountaintop speech was given just before he was assassinated.
That's what I thought. Can you remind me what year that was? Because I have a question leading up to
Okay,
that.
that was in '68.
Okay. Thank you. So, in about 2012, I was going through a big change in my life, and I heard Patty Griffith sing this song, Up to the Mountain, based on his speech. And for some reason, in the middle of the night, I started writing my personal Up to the Mountain speech at this time. So my question to you, in a way, is if you were going to write a line or two or express a phrase or two for, like, the next of us, or does anything come to mind or to heart?
If I were to write a line, nothing comes to mind right now. I would have to sit down a long time and think about that. A long time. Yes, ma'am.
So I just looked it up, and the speech was on a Wednesday. Did that make it challenging to get people to take off from work? Obviously not in school. I don't think school was in session in late August. But,
Well, school had not begun yet. So, and it was a bunch of teenagers that went. The two sponsors, Charles Rogers was president of the International Longshoremen's Union, and I think Mr. Horton worked for the city of Southport. So I don't know how, you know. But I don't remember them talking about that aspect, getting off or what have you. Yes.
What was your motivation to become involved with this group if it wasn't perhaps your parents' thing or your, of course, your siblings were younger? What drew you into it and kept you there?
Well, somebody told me that if things were going to change, it was up to me. We were in a group because they were recruiting, and I remember them saying, if things are going to get better, it's up to this group.
That's valid.
And what kept me there, I'm not a quitter per se. I'll try to stick it out to the end. I've always been like that. And whatever I join, I'll try to give it 100%. But Dr. King was one of those people that, it's a good thing he was a good person. I'll put it like that. It's a good thing he was a good person. And I mean, you just knew that he was sincere about what he was doing. He was honest and forthright, and
Oh, Lord, we need
And
one of those today.
yes. And he could not have gone through all that, especially with them trying to hurt his family and all of that. You know, so a lot of people would have quit. Say, you know, I just quit. Somebody else do this, but he didn't say that.
Well, who else went to Washington that we might know today?
Most of them are dead, to tell you the truth. Howard Lee.
But I mean from here, like,
Howard Lee.
yeah.
You don't remember how?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean from here, people you were in school with, went to church with.
I think Marie Phelps was on the bus, but I'm not sure.
Was it mostly boys?
It was mostly boys. It was.
Most of the parents wouldn't let their daughters go, do you think?
I was thinking that,
Uh,
imagine that for parents to make that decision to let their children go must have been difficult.
Yeah. I don't know. Now, my mother was very protective because not only was this my first trip to Washington, D.C., I'd never been away from home overnight. And so for her to let me go, I was as shocked as everybody. But I'm going. You said I could go. I'm out of here.
Were your parents in the NAACP in Southport?
I think my mother joined, but I don't remember her attending many meetings.
Okay. Did they talk about it much in your home?
They did. But she never asked me what happened. You know, if I would go online, she didn't say, were you on the line tonight or anything like that? And she might say, well, I guess nothing happened. I said, no, nothing happened, you know.
Now, was most of the protesting that you were involved in up in Wilmington or Southport or both?
Both.
Both.
When you reference being on the line, I'm sorry, exactly what does that mean?
The protest line.
So there was some of you who were and some who weren't?
Yes. There was like line A and line B. And you were on line, let's say I was on line A. And let's say the person in front of me was getting tired or upset or whatever, or hot, whatever. Then the person that was in charge of the line would pull that person off and put one in. And we were there a specific time. You weren't there all day. So many minutes a day, and then it'd go back, and surprise, surprise, we'd come back another time.
And kind of what were you doing when you were on the line?
Marching with signs. And we couldn't speak, we couldn't acknowledge you, we couldn't acknowledge any friends we saw, eyes straight ahead.
And did people harass you that were?
They did.
And you were
Called us names, and when I started teaching, you know how 7th graders are, they're good for that name calling thing.
Yes.
I said, if that ain't what your mama called you, you don't answer to it, because that's not you. And that's what they told us. If it's not your name, they're not talking to you.
Wow, we need to break down a few of these things that really, they've carried through time. They mean something.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Did you share your experiences with your students?
The first group I did, I began teaching the year Brunswick County desegregated.
When was that?
1969. And you got to remember King was killed in 68. So the first year I taught, there were bomb scares, and then we'd have to evacuate the building, and it was a tense situation. And but like us, when school was out, they could play together, but they couldn't acknowledge each other any other way. And there were some diehards, as they are everywhere. So when we got to that part, and I taught history, so when we got to that part,
Yes.
I told them I had been to the March on Washington. They didn't realize the significance of it either.
You taught here in Southport?
I taught at the middle school here in Southport. I taught at the high school in Charlotte, 69 till they built West Brunswick, and then I taught at West Brunswick. Then I retired, took a year off, then I went back and taught for 4 years in the alternative school.
And do you have children?
I do.
What would you say to your children today on how, in the political environment today, how do I word this? Yeah, it's such a different, well, I don't know, maybe it's not different, maybe that's how it was. How to act and react to things happening in today's political environment.
Well, my children are more like my husband. They take on his personality a little more than they do mine. Now, my daughter's a little fireball, but she can get a little fiery sometimes. But they're usually sort of calm people, can look at the situation and decide whether or not this is, you know, something I need to get upset about. They registered to vote the first time they could. They vote in every election. They have opinions. We discuss what's going on and, you know, that kind of thing. Yes, sir.
So, in 1969 or 70, I don't remember which year it was, when the schools were combined and they didn't hold graduation because parents couldn't decide whether they wanted to go over at Caswell or at the auditorium. How did the students react when that happened? That, you know, they'd come together finally, and yet the parents were still trying to pull the strings. And what really caused that? Was it more of the parents than anything?
Now, I was in college when that happened.
Yeah.
But they always regretted not having a graduation. Now, some of those people go to church with me. Mm. And the year that they celebrated that class, the Alumni Association put the message out for everybody, but none of the white students decided to participate. And they gave them a graduation as part of the celebration of that class year. Graduation was a big deal when I went to school. And everybody showed up, your grandmama, your aunts, your uncles, little brothers and sisters. Everybody was dressed in their finest. And when we did graduation, we were lined up at the door, and Mr. Gore, who was the coordinator for graduation, said, if you're late, just go in and sit down. Don't even get in the line. Just before the line came in, don't even get in the line. And we practiced that little graduation march, and it was a big, big, big deal. So to them, they lost a lot. Everybody looked for pomp and circumstance.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any questions for Lynn? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I didn't pass out, and I told her when she introduces me, I'm going to get up and go right out that door. I didn't do that either.
I'm glad. I'm very glad.
Bringing in a wide press. She really brought in a wide press.
I want to say just a couple things. Somebody was talking about the March on Washington being on a Wednesday, and my understanding is that that date was picked specifically. It was August 28th, which was the anniversary of the death of Emmett Till. So I think there was significance. So it happened to fall on a Wednesday, but I can't imagine that it was a coincidence that those two dates coincided. I have a short, like a 5-minute video if you guys would like to see it. when Laverna told me a couple years ago that she had seen, oh, now the TV turned off again. Lisa, I don't know what I did, what it did that. She told me, when you told me that you'd seen Peter, Paul, and Mary, then I got curious as to whether there were any videos of Peter, Paul, and Mary from the March on Washington, because you always see the speech, but I never thought about the performers. And so I did find, is it coming?
It's working.
I found a video with their performance and a little bit of them talking about what it was like, which I thought was really interesting, because she told me, you know, she was watching Peter, Paul, and Mary. When it didn't cross my mind until I saw the video, they were watching the people, right? So I just thought that was really interesting that they were also moved by the by it. So let me just play that for you guys real quick. It's 6
Peter, Paul, and
minutes.
Mary started to sing Bob Dylan's songs when Albert Grossman brought an acetate of Blowing in the Wind, and this song was so stunning and so magical that we took it right away, made an arrangement, went into the studio and recorded it.
They always wanted to sing, I think, songs which had real import, which were really something which would help to try and change this world. And they came along at the height of that civil rights struggle. And they had the ears of the whole world, particularly of this country.
I think this march will go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, demonstrations for freedom and human dignity ever held in the United States.
Mary speaks of the moment of recognition of the March on Washington in 1963, which Martin Luther King delivered his I Have a Dream speech, as her first recognition of something that has been primary in our relationship.
And now, a group of singers who have come to help express in song what this great meeting is all about. I give you now Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Started to sing, and I had an epiphany, looking out at this 250,000 people. I truly believed at that moment it was possible that human beings could join together to make a positive social change.
How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? How many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years must a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea?
And then all of a sudden, the lyrics are coming out. You know, and how many years will it take before people can be free? And you're thinking, wow, this is the integration of everything that you sing and you feel strongly, and the moment. There was a breakout in thinking, a desire to say, let's think for ourselves independently. We won't be the instrument of somebody else's intent, but we will really be a different kind of people living in a different kind of society.
The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Really give you a feel for the crowd there, doesn't it? I love those. I was raised on those songs, so it's very nostalgic for me. Anyway, thank you again, Laverne. This is wonderful.